Welcome to the Intrazone Roadmap Pitstop December 2019 edition. This is a bonus monthly show that answers that burning question in your mind. What's rolling out now for SharePoint and related Microsoft 365 technologies? This month, I talk with Kaarin Shumate, a senior content developer on the SharePoint team, focused solely on SharePoint admin help and how-to documentation for support.office.com and docs.microsoft.com. SharePoint and related tech were the gifts that kept on giving throughout 2019, and it's quite a sleigh ride this month through the Roadmap Pitstop. Each Roadmap Pitstop item this month is like an advent calendar item with the new drop-down menu. Now, before we dive in and see what's advented this month, let's take a quick pause to listen to the Billboard hit that's topping the holiday charts this season, Up on the Cloud Top by the K's Northwest. Not only is this topping the charts, this is really for you, all of you Microsoft 365 audience listeners out there. And selfishly for me, it was really fun to be doing this with my kids. You'll hear Eli Kashman on cello, Sophie Kashman co-singing with me, but it's something that we hope brings a little warmth to the end of 2019 and really jumpstarts your 2020. So sit back, relax, and enjoy for you Up on the Cloud Top.
Up on the cloud top, a fruitful loft, out jumps good old Microsoft, updating tenants with lots of features, all for us collaborative creatures. Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Up on the mouse pad, point and click, down through the Wi-Fi comes good Saint Mick. First comes the portal of our HR crew. Oh dear Office, make it new. Give them more news that's personalized and nice. News that will open on any device. Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Up on the mouse pad, point and click. Down through the Wi-Fi comes good Saint Mick. Next comes the Teams chat and sharing files. Oh, to imagine co-authoring smiles. Here is the Teams tab, the list that grows. Powered by Power Automate business flows. Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Ho, 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 who wouldn't go? Up on the mouse pad, point and click. Down through the Wi-Fi comes good Saint Mick. Now SharePoint, now OneDrive, now Teams and Planner. On Outlook, on OneNote, on Stream and Yammer. To the top of the app launcher, to the top of the cloud. Now dash away, dash away, dash away, tech crowd.
Okay, zip up your parkas, pull on your boots, and hold on to your mittens and hats, because here we go. First up on this blustery December 2019 ride is all about employee engagement. How do you broadcast across the whole organization? The first item this month is audience targeting in SharePoint organizational news. This allows page authors and site owners to tag pages and news posts with Azure Active Directory groups and then filter content within these web parts to people within those groups to target them with relevant content. Next up is file upload for Microsoft Forms. This new feature allows form designers to choose a new question type, file upload, which enables respondents to attach files as part of their response. Files can be accessed in either SharePoint or OneDrive, depending on the form type. Group forms use SharePoint, while personal forms use OneDrive. Form creators can limit the number and size of files as well as specify file types. There's a great article where you can learn more and a lot of great GIFs so you can see it in action. Next and last is a little bit of a long section, but it really leads into the interview that we have with Kaarin to learn a lot more around how they write and help SharePoint admins in the cloud. And this is a multi-part update of what they've brought new recently to the actual SharePoint Admin Center. So let's look at the first feature. The first feature isn't new. It's something that you were able to do with PowerShell, but it's now in the SharePoint Admin Center user interface. You can replace the root site. You replace the root site with another SharePoint site within the Admin Center. The original root site is moved to a different URL and can be restored if necessary. Next is the permissions panel. This has gotten a big overhaul. You can now see the site owners, members, and visitors. If it's an Office 365 group-connected site, you can see the group owners and add or remove additional site admins if needed. The next thing is something that's been in the entire suite for a long time. It's the People card. Hovering over the name of a user on the active sites list or in the details pane lets you see details about the user. Again, this is the same pervasive People card experience that you see throughout Microsoft 365. There are also now additional site-level sharing settings. For all sites, you can now limit sharing by domain, set the default sharing link type, and set default sharing link permissions. Previously, you could only do this on tasks for classic sites on the classic site collections page. You can also now make any one links expire, and additionally, the external sharing column is now included when you export your site list as a CSV file. The navigation page is customizable. You can hide items you don't use or collapse the navigation menu to see more content on the page. The Classic Features page has been renamed to More Features, and all of the classic features are shown on the page so that you don't have to click into More Classic Features to see them all. They're all just right there. The last is a few design updates. The Details pane has been widened to provide more space for future enhancements and to match the design of other Microsoft 365 admin centers. And the Settings page has been redesigned as a list that lets you see the current value for each setting. This is a bit of an overhaul for the entire SharePoint Admin Center, and I hope you experience it as new features and just a great new admin experience. So now that you have a couple of the new SharePoint Admin Center features in your head, let's turn to an interview with Kaarin Shumate to hear a little bit more on how she and her team write for the SharePoint Cloud admins in Microsoft 365. All right, it's that time in the show where we take a turn to learn from some of the folks that are behind the scenes working at Microsoft to help either build the product or make it better, or in this case, to make it more digestible. We're going to take a moment and interview Kaarin Shumate, who is a senior content developer for the SharePoint team. Kaarin, welcome to the show.
Hi, Mark. Good to see you.
So I picked up on three things on your LinkedIn profile that I thought would just be fun for everybody to hear on how you promote yourself, and then maybe to get a little context behind it. The three things were that you listed content strategy and writing and managing help documentation. That one I pretty much knew, but that I think really grounds what you're doing. UX writing and accessibility and writing for a global audience. So if that is a part of your LinkedIn profile, what do some of those things mean for what you do here at Microsoft?
Absolutely. I'd love to talk about that. So for the first part, content strategy and writing and managing help documentation, this is really about deciding what needs to be documented and how do we flow from basic information to more detailed information. How do we organize all the information? Where does it go? How does it link? And when we have to write new documentation, how does it fit into what's already there? And how do we help people find it?
And when it comes then to, writing for this new audience, what I think we've focused a lot more on is the user experience, not just the user interface, but what is actually the look and the feel of when you interact with SharePoint or OneDrive, or I know you write about a lot of different products. Just talk about the UX component of it.
Yeah, that's the favorite part of my job. It's where I feel like I have the greatest impact. And I think a lot of people don't know what a UX writer is. So I work really closely with PMs, with designers, and user researchers to make sure that the user experience is clear and that we provide the right information and only that information to the right people at the right time. And so that fits in with the design. And we make sure that the words, together with the controls, are all intuitive so that we don't have to go and create documentation to explain what should be clear right there in the user experience.
And that's the big difference. I think I would have probably in a narrow way promoted your team as writing the help documentation. But as you'll learn, and I think our audience will learn through this interview, but also just hearing you define it, it's actually what's in the product. As you go and you click on a menu, as you click to a new page or you go into a settings environment, you will actually see the words that your team work a lot on.
Right. And if you think about it, when was the last time you needed help, for example, for an app on your phone? Hopefully you never have to go to it because it's all clear right there. You know what's next.
Yeah, in-product help, and I think the way also it's been designed in the last few years, it's contextual,
Yeah.
is obviously meaning that people don't need to go and find some deep, dark hole of the internet, but it's actually right there in the context of what they're doing.
Right.
But I think the other important thing that it really highlights what you put in your profile, but I think a lot of work that you and the team put into the product is this accessibility notion. How accessible is SharePoint? I remember SharePoint of the past, it was we would go through the WCAG 2A and get some high crazy achievement, which was really good. We always strive for that. But I think we've doubled down in both the words and the experience. So when you put accessibility, helping to target a global audience, what is accessibility for a global audience?
Well, it's really two things. One is right in product. So we work closely with the team to go through the experience using a screen reader and using only a keyboard, not a mouse. And then in the documentation as well, we have to make sure that, for example, when we use a heading, that we actually style it as a heading and we don't just boldface it. And we have to make sure that there's no information in images that people who are using a screen reader miss, so that the information is right there in the article in the text. And we also make sure that the language is conversational in English and that it will also translate smoothly. So we use things like simple verb forms, consistent terminology. That's really important. And when we do these things well, we don't just help people who are using screen readers or people who are looking at our products in a different language. We help all sorts of people.
So to make this particular podcast a little bit more accessible, we are now a little bit more fluent on who Kaarin is. Can you give us a little insight in how you landed on the SharePoint team? And I think the name of your team most recently used to be the Max team, but it's now the Marvel team.
It is.
Maybe a little bit of what's behind the name. And having you on the show, I'm just going to call you Captain Marvel. You can't get away from that.
Do I get a cape?
Absolutely. Woo! Absolutely. So give us a little insight on the name Marvel, but then really what's the primary focus for the team on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so Marvel stands for a lot of things. The M stands for modern. The A stands for assistance and adoption. R for responsive and research. V for voice and video. And then we have E for engagement and L for learning. And my team does lots of fun stuff. We not only work on UX and on documentation, but we also do things like office templates and videos and training and posters.
All right, so Captain Marvel in our universe,
yes,
the Microsoft comic universe, you are a UX accessibility superhero.
Thank you.
All right, so let's really dig into what we're here to talk about. Earlier in the show, I talked about a number of new features that have been released or are being released for the SharePoint Admin Center. But let's dig into how you support the SharePoint Cloud Admin. I think you support admins of all types, but certainly there's a bigger focus on cloud admins.
Right.
And in the context of how we write documentation, how-to articles, the actual in-app help, where does that come from? What do you derive and what you put there? You listen to a lot of feedback. What do you get in terms of what needs to go into that support documentation?
Well, that has changed so much over time. In the olden days, we used to write about basically everything that was in the interface. So if it said there was a box labeled description, we would say, in the description box, enter your description. And documentation was often really long, and it was hard to find the important information. Now, our first priority is making the user experiences clear and simple. And we focus on the documentation on things that aren't in the UI, like planning and tips and interactions with other services. And we partner closely with user research to listen to real customers and to see how they experience the features so that we can have a better understanding of it.
So obviously things have changed.
Yes.
If one of the big things that have changed in how we create the product and how we release the product, with that shift in mind, what has been different in the world of online help going from SharePoint Server on premises to SharePoint in Microsoft 365?
Yeah, the cycle of our work has changed just like the cycle for customers. It used to be that you'd have a big update coming up, so you'd prepare for it, and then it would happen, and then you'd sort of take a breath. And now we're constantly making updates, not just for changes in our own service, but for changes in other services that impact our documentation. And that's a challenge. But I love how we can update our documentation now based on customer feedback. That's so important. Before, we used to ship something based on what we knew, and later on, things would come to light and we wouldn't have a chance to update it. And so now we're constantly getting feedback from customers and updating as little things change all around. But it's busy.
Yeah, I imagine your day is always filled with, hey, this doesn't quite make sense, or hey, this is missing a little something that I think could help, or I think what is hopefully more the feedback you're getting is, hey, the documentation is there. That was really helpful. If I think in the past, I remember documentation always came really late in the cycle of development because we had this 3-year planning, development, and then, of course, building the product. When it came time to release it, oftentimes the documentation itself was in that same cycle of at the very end, then we started to document. So it came often after beta,
yes,
and barely just in time for the release of the product. Now I think it's at the time when we start to release a feature.
Right.
The documentation is ready to roll or ready to be updated. So if you're hearing a lot of feedback, what is actually some of the feedback that you're getting from these cloud admins? And certainly if there's anything you can credit as a verbatim or just as a most common thing that you're hearing.
Yeah, one piece of feedback we got just the other day was from someone using the new SharePoint Admin Center and said, top-level site collections are very hard to find. So if you've worked in the new SharePoint Admin Center, you know that it has a page called Active Sites, and the classic SharePoint Admin Center has a page called Site Collections. And the sites that are on these pages aren't the same, and the information isn't quite the same. And we're now encouraging people to create modern team sites, communication sites, which are actually site collections, and to use hub sites to connect them instead of creating subsites. So the term site collections we're moving away from, but it's a hard journey. And as we're changing that to site and we're explaining what you're creating when you're creating a modern team site or a communication site, it can be confusing, and that we're in a period of transition. So that's something that I'm trying to help customers with.
So you did not advocate the Create Site button on the new SharePoint start page to say Create New Site Collection.
Correct.
Okay. Well, I know what that means from the past. I certainly know that that is consistent feedback. And actually, one of the pages that I saw in researching in what you all are doing is basically a translation matrix.
Yes.
What we used to say this now means that.
Yes.
This means that, which
I
I thought was really clever and certainly hopefully helpful to the cloud admins.
Yeah, we're trying to help people find things too. You used to go here to do this. Now you can go here to do it.
All right. So I think this is kind of the fun part of the interview because you are the expert creating these articles, or your team is creating articles. We always put links in the show notes of things that we think are helpful. So to get from your perspective, whether it's a help or how-to article or any specific documentation, what do you think is the most important support article or articles that your team has published in the last year?
Well, we've got a couple. One of our most popular pieces is about the SharePoint migration tool, but that's a big topic. But we also have a new article about creating a healthy portal. And we have another one it's an introduction to file collaboration in Microsoft 365 powered by SharePoint.
So these are all obviously determined by, hey, we're about to ship the new migration tool or an update to it. So It's time to put the documentation out. But for the last two, creating and launching a healthy SharePoint portal and an introduction to the file collaboration, and that's not in SharePoint, that's in Microsoft 365.
Correct.
My bet, and I would love to get your feedback, is for those last two articles, we may have proactively thought, hey, we should put this together. But I bet it was determined by feedback, people getting a little lost, confusion, or questions that people are asking. So is that correct? A lot of it is driven by how people are engaging on what we first put out there, and then we iterate off of that?
Yes, we're looking at the data that comes in from docs.microsoft.com, and we're seeing what people are clicking on and the feedback that they're leaving and the search queries and trying to figure out where the gaps are.
Great. Excellent. So thank you for your time and, of course, the work that you're doing, keeping pace with not only the product team, but the world. When you say global audience, that always scares me a little bit. But hope you're looking forward to a nice holiday break. And thanks for continuing all the great guidance and knowledge online.
Thanks, Mark. Happy holidays to you. I wanted to also let people know that we're doing our best to stay on top of changes, but we always appreciate it if you let us know if you see something that doesn't seem quite right, or if you read an article and you're left with questions afterward. So we encourage you to use the feedback control in the upper right of the page on docs.microsoft.com. And if you have a GitHub account, you can even enter an issue or submit a pull request. And when your pull request is merged, your profile picture will be added to the top of the article. And if you're using the new SharePoint Admin Center, please use the feedback button in the lower right corner, and I will read it.
I've heard that you read everything.
We
I see
do.
that what you read, and then we work on what do we do with that feedback.
Yep.
Excellent. Great ways to get a hold of you. Again, thanks for coming into the studio.
Thanks again, Mark.
All right, it is now time to hear more of the wisps of snow coming off the sleigh as we round into teamwork. How do you work with one to few people across your team to get work done every day? We hope these next set of features will help you do that going forward. The first up is a new set of modern list features. When you want to know the different totals across different columns, you can now either enable that or disable that to have the columns show up in a modern list view. Currently, this capability was limited to the classic mode. We also now have a rich text formatting when you want to have text look different colors, shading, size, and format, and even some icons that you can bring in through the new rich text editor for each cell that you want to adjust the text formatting. Next up is the concept around alternate rows. This just makes things a lot more readable for people who are consuming your lists. Users will be able to create a document view for list data that features column formatting and or alternating colors by row. There are a lot of new features and, of course, a lot of things that we released across modern lists, and you can read that and all of the new capabilities in a bunch of links in the show notes. The last thing we want to be clear about is what we're doing when we are retiring the SharePoint Classic and Delve blogs. SharePoint Classic blogs and Delve blogs are being retired. Existing SharePoint Classic blogs will continue to work as expected, including the ability to create new posts, but will not be able to create new blog sites after a period of time. Delve blogs will no longer be available for creation, and existing blogs will eventually be removed after an extended period of read-only access. We do recommend creating communication sites using News, Yammer, and Stream as a modern way of engaging your audience. There's a great help article on getting a communication site with News set up, and if you want to transition some of your existing blog content to a modern communication site, that's possible using the community-supported PnP page transformation tool. We'll have a link to both the help article and the tool to help you get transitioned from SharePoint Classic blogs and Delve blogs into the new modern communication sites with news posts. Next up is related tech that shipped in December 2019, and I have two items for you. Microsoft Flow is becoming Microsoft Power Automate. As announced at Microsoft Ignite 2019, Microsoft Flow is being renamed to Microsoft Power Automate to better align with the Microsoft Power Platform. You will start to see Microsoft Flow be replaced by Microsoft Power Automate throughout the service. These changes will start to become visible in Microsoft Documentation, the Admin Center, and in the near future, you'll see this with OneDrive and SharePoint primarily in lists and libraries. The next item is something that I've actually been using for the last week just to try it out. It is the Outlook for the web as a progressive web app. With this update, your users will be able to install Outlook on the web as a progressive web app in Chromium-based browsers. PWAs are websites that provide native app-like features on supporting platforms and browser engines. When Outlook is installed as a PWA, users can launch it from the Start menu, pin it to the taskbar, and run it as a standalone browser window that removes standard browser interface elements. Microsoft will continue to update Outlook on the web with additional app-like capabilities. Think of this as the best of the Outlook for the web, where Outlook often ships the latest features, like the new files experience for groups, tasks powered by the to-do that's built in, a nice unsubscribe button for unwanted newsletters, nicer previews of attachments like images, and tons more. I've been using this for the last week, and I'll think about actually keeping it as my daily driver. I really like the interface. It's very fast, and it just works. Next, I want to tell you about two things that are coming your way next month, and these will come to you as predictions. Prediction number 1, custom search results page for SharePoint sites. I think I hear a little cheering in the background on that prediction. And prediction number 2, SharePoint page version history. So we will see if those 2 predictions come true in January 2020. All right, let's move into resources. We've added a list and checked it twice of important resource links in the show notes based on this month's innovation. These links will assist you in learning more about the Message Center, the Microsoft 365 Public Roadmap, our SharePoint and OneDrive community blogs, and all things Twitter. All the places you need to get up to speed and stay ahead. We hope you've enjoyed this nice, smooth sleigh ride through the pit stop. Stay engaged and ask questions. We're here to put our and your best change management foot forward. May your productivity vision be 2020 this year and next. So Eli, what is your New Year's resolution? Give us one.
I would like to become more organized with my time so that I am not procrastinating for 7 hours after school.
That was mine.
All right, so while your brother's not procrastinating, Sophie, what is your end-of-year resolution?
I want to get better at visual art. And I want to get into college. Really bad.
Yeah, you are in, but yeah, I'll support that. And I'll support both you being on time and staying on time and getting in college. So my end of year resolution is my 2020 prediction is to work on my diction. For the sake of the podcast, I want to make sure that everything that we say comes across nice and clear, of course, accurate, and of course, exciting. So thank you both for coming in the studio, and if you would help me wish everybody Happy New Year. We're just going to say it
Of course.
together. Are you ready?
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Happy New Year!